Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
And good, what is this?
It's a new year.
A new year. Welcome to 2024 and Spotlight Keene.
God, I remember 2023 like it was a couple days ago.
Yeah, I'm Chris Coates, and you are?
I am still Randy Filiault.
And we're here to get back on that horse and ride it out again about talking about what's happening in the city, but also could be other places too. But
around the world, yeah.
And so, we test drove our first run. And don't know what people thought. I appreciate that some people that did reach out to me and say it was nice to see you guys back, and some other comments that they made that made me laugh a little bit. But especially the old ones. On your part, not
like
me.
We're like the two remaining Beatles back together again, you know.
But and so first, let's start off with 2024. Did you stay up?
Made it 12:01. That was about it. It was a struggle. We did, stayed home, watched Netflix, a couple of things here and there, and did manage to stay up to 12:01, and that was it. But my those days of going out on New Year's Eve, especially from back, owning an establishment back in the day, those days are way behind me. Now it's tuck myself in.
No, I went away for Christmas. I went to my daughter has a house that they purchased out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and so we went out there and I actually put on the boards and went skiing, and
oh, cool.
And that was the first time in like 8 or 9 years I had gone skiing.
I saw when you came in, you were kind of limping today. So that explains.
Well, you ever
that.
watch that? I don't know. Were you ever a Dick Van Dyke fan?
Yep.
The Dick Van Dyke Show, when he had it on. There's one where this wife says, Laura Petrie says, "Don't go skiing. You're going to hurt yourself." He says, "I'm not going to hurt myself," and he hurts himself, and he comes back. And he's not going to let her know that he hurt herself. Yeah. So, he hugs her, and he's all wrapped up, and he hugs her, and she leaves him, and he's like, does the big faces. That was, something my wife kept saying to me. But no,
you made it.
I made it, and
cool.
We had what a beautiful part of the country. I had never been there before. I would go back, probably will go back on a regular basis now that she has a house out there. But I'll tell you, we had deer, and they call them, is it donkey deer? I don't know, but their size, they look more like a donkey than they do. And they would come right up and just literally the window's here, they're on the other side of the window.
Like feed us?
And my grandkids are just like going crazy. They're just like, they just want to look at you for a while. Yeah, and
they probably recognized you from the show we did last week.
That's probably it. They probably, because you can get us on YouTube. You can get us on YouTube
it's
too.
Him.
But it was beautiful. We went. I got my cowboy hat. I should have worn that. I'll wear that next week. I'll bring it so you guys can see. I don't have it yet. It's in the mail. It's coming because you don't travel with it.
Checks in the mail.
Yeah. So they sent it back. But it's we went to some nice restaurants, stayed home. We had a beautiful Christmas. It was just overall, it was just a nice experience. Then we flew, and I'll tell you, I won't say the airlines, but because it really is not the airlines. The airlines, they just do the job. They get you from here to there. It's the in between stuff. It's the flying into Chicago, not Midway, but Chicago O'Hare, and not finding a place to park the plane. Now, they know you're coming. They know you're coming, and they can't find a place to park you. So and the only reason I know this is because there was a group of people out there looked like they're having some important meeting because there's some construction work going on. And we passed them once, and then I looked out the window, and there they were again. I'm like, we just went in a circle. And, and it happened on the way back, too. It's just like you couldn't find a place to park the plane, and you have to go so far to initially find the place in the first place, and then getting back out and getting out on the flight. And then we got in and we were late getting in, so we missed the bus to the hotel that had our car parked at it for the week. And so we had to wait another 45 minutes. So by the time it was 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm leaving Boston, so we got in at 3. But I was work by 8 o'clock that morning.
Yep.
On Friday, And then New Year's for me wasn't. Well, it was crazy. We had a group of friends of ours that on Friday, like I said, we got in at 3. I got up at 8. My wife took the day off. She was smart, and we that night, the friends of ours said, "We'll see you tonight, right?" I'm like, "What?" And we hadn't opened up our mail to get the invite for a party they were having. So we put our vests on, looked as pretty as we possibly could, and went to the party.
That must have been a challenge on your half.
I know, it was. My wife, it's no problem at all with me. It's I have that makeup team that comes in and they spend hours. But we went, and then Saturday we did stuff around, but I started not feeling well on Saturday. And I was sicker than a dog Saturday night, Sunday, Monday. But I started feeling better last night. Yesterday afternoon, actually, probably.
Well, of course, in this area, the new strain of COVID is running rampant through Keene right now. So
RSV, COVID right now, but there's also the normal
cold,
throw up, use the bathroom on so many different ways.
I think when I was growing up as a kid, my mother would call it, you got a case of the grip.
Yeah.
That's what it was called.
You got a case of the grip. The toilet?
It was like, just grip the toilet, throw up, and go out and play.
Well, it was throw up. It was everything. And the worst part of it wasn't throw up's never good, but it was the headache at the end. Everything else, the stomach started feeling better, everything else, and went right to, I had this headache, and it was just finally, it started easing right about the time the Alabama game started. So, that was
football always cures a lot of ills. But no, we had to delay our swearing in ceremony for city council on New Year's Day because the mayor and his wife tested positive for COVID. I'm aware one other city councilor did also. So it's the more, I guess, the updated minor version right now, but it's still out there. Not obviously.
Did you get your shot for this year?
I've got all 4 major shots for everything, and I mean they probably just gave me an extra one just for whatever.
Yeah.
But every other week, October through November, my wife and we went out and got a shot. It was the flu, COVID, pneumonia,
so it wasn't at a
and
bar.
the RSV respiratory. Wrong type of shot.
Okay.
But I did hear that they're working on next year. They're working on instead of a COVID shot, it's an inhaler. That because COVID mainly affects the lungs, and they find that an inhaler goes directly to the lungs and has a better reaction.
Interesting.
So next year, instead of a shot, it might be an inhaler, but we'll see. But so it got delayed. So swearing in will be Thursday night at 6, an hour before the council meeting officially starts. Then we'll go right into the nuts and bolts.
Well, isn't that similar to what happened the last 2 years ago? Didn't you guys find that there was some rule that you couldn't do it on the 1st or something?
It happened. I think it was a Sunday because it was also a holiday. I don't know if it was a Jewish holiday or something, but it had something to do with it being Sunday more so than being the 1st. Because I remember that also. But also, I think 2 years ago, if I remember right, we got sworn in because COVID was still out there. We got sworn in on the Common downtown. We sworn in outside. It was cold that day too.
Yeah.
And so this year, just when you think everything's back to normal, it still isn't quite. Or maybe this is just the new normal.
It is the new normal. That's what I tell everybody is that 2019 was not normal. 2019 to 2021 was 2 years of hell.
Right.
And it was us learning every single day, every single minute. I mean, during the day, things might change. When it initially hit, I mean, I'll never forget 2019. I was in D.C. at a conference. And then I went to my daughter's house. And I remember going to this conference that had over 600 people in it. My son-in-law met me. We went to a Capitals game because I was from a walking distance to the Capitol Center.
Yep.
And we went to this packed Mexican bar prior to the game. And I'm thinking to myself, all that happened. And I flew down there. I went to my daughter's house. Then my wife flew down and met us there. And we spent the weekend. Then we got on the plane and flew back. And by Thursday that week, we were closing the nursing home. Because, we were just like shutting everything down. And that's how fast it happened.
That was the year. Well, I follow Keene High hockey a lot. I love hockey, and of course, especially being a school board member, I try to get to all the games. That was before I was a school board member. But it's ugly. Don't even go there.
Because I was probably one of the best goalies ever to play at Robin Hood Park.
I was a great...
I was as good as Ken Dryden and anybody else. I just had to be brought out on boots.
Yeah.
I couldn't skate.
And basically,
I could not skate to save myself.
Being the wide frame you have, they put you in front of the goal. Just don't move.
What are you saying?
Just don't move. No, I've learned how to skate, actually not till I was an adult after I got married, because my wife Holly was brought up on skates and skis. She can just do backward figure eights just like it's nothing. I can do a backward thing, but it's more like a comma or an exclamation point as I fall on my rear on the ice. And I did some hard falls up at Robin Hood too. Yeah. Basically, I can skate. The Robin Hood pond is enough for me to do one turn. Mm-hmm. That's my skating ability.
Is Robin Hood even open?
No, it hasn't even frozen over. I mean, I'll have to ride by today and see if every time it starts to freeze over, it might have frozen over last night again. But then, it rains. It goes up in the 40s.
Does it need a certain amount of inches before they'll let it be?
Yeah. And looking at the weather forecast now, once again, later on the week, it looks like 40. They say it might possibly... Well, they thought heavy snow this Sunday, but now they're looking at more like it might be a rain event again. So I don't know if Robin Hood will even get open this year. The time that you have basically January, February, and half of March.
Yeah.
And usually it usually freezes up in December. Then by January, well, I remember a lot of times Christmas Eve, skating up at, we had the skating events up at Robin Hood Park, and now it's just water.
Yeah.
So climate change is real. For those of you that don't believe it, just look around.
I mean, look at, we were out in Wyoming, like I said, and they're 100 inches down. Now, they had snow on the ground, but not like...
It showed the whole country. The whole country is virtually, with the exception of the high peaks, it's green, the whole country.
Yeah, 100 inches down. And I bet you if we looked at where we're supposed to be, we're probably 100 inches down.
Oh, easily. One place I feel bad for is, Granite Gorge, the former Pinnacle Mountain, the ski area that, local people invested a heck of a lot of money in and are still investing a heck of a lot of money in. And they have snow-making ability, which they do virtually every night. But then every day it goes up in the 40s and rains.
Yeah, but even if it goes up in the 40s, that's fine, because in the evenings it goes down and it gets cold enough for them to make snow and blah, blah, blah. It's the rain. It's the days and days and days of rain that's just killing everybody. Pat's Peak. I mean, drive by Pat's Peak on the way home. I looked up there and looked green on one of the trails. Yeah. Where they don't have the snowmaking, machines. And it's just a travesty.
When you get into budgets, and people talk about, this will segue right into something. You talk about taxes, and obviously part of what keeps property taxes somewhat down, not enough, is revenues from the state. Mm-hmm. That's another story for another day. Revenues from the state are based on projections. A lot of those projections are based on how much they think is going to come in from the ski areas and the winter sports. Right. And that's a huge part of New Hampshire's economy. And you go all the way through December and going into a week in January with nothing, I mean, that cuts into the economy significantly. And you don't get that back. But, you don't get 2 extra weeks added on going into the spring and summer. You lose that.
We're already and here's the problem that faces the city of Keene and other communities throughout the state of New Hampshire. The state of New Hampshire doesn't pay its fair share, which I know that's where you're headed anyways.
Oh, yeah. Never. Yeah.
And I get that. But with that being said, they're already tight. So what happens when the revenue doesn't come in? Because and they aren't willing to do certain things. Let's look at this whole casino thing. Mm-hmm. I read more and more day in, day out where there are people that are misusing funds, right and left around these charitable casinos.
Well, at this point, I've only heard of one that's been, that's the Sanborns. Let's be honest with it. They have one up in Concord. Could be. I mean, right now they're the only ones that have had the license taken away. Yeah. Because of gross. I mean, when you look at that, that's just gross negligence. That's not even one of those marginal things where you might talk your way out of.
But my point is that they chose not to go this route, of a bigger casino like MGM that would possibly, I don't know.
Oh, I see where you're going here. Yeah.
They don't legalize marijuana where we're surrounded by every other state in New England is legalized it. So they're getting some level of revenue. they cut them. They cut their nose to help the whatever the saying is.
Yeah, to spite their face. Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, whether you agree with marijuana or not, whatever. You go to Vermont, Massachusetts, or Maine, which in New Hampshire, take a left, go south, or take a right, and you're there and you're buying it. Obviously in Keene area, but he goes over to Brattleboro or down to Greenfield, Mass. And, you get over to the center, the other side of the state, they'll go down into Mass over into Maine. And the revenue lost on that is millions. And I mean, if we're going to use the argument that we're not going to have marijuana because it's dangerous or whatever, then you have to use the same argument for alcohol. But they don't. And I think a lot of the argument before was, well, the state would lose competition. Mm-hmm. The Liquor Commission might lose money if marijuana was legalized. Hence why the governor said, well, maybe if we're going to do this, we'll sell them at the liquor stores so the state can gain some revenue. And you know what? I'm fine. I'm fine if they do that. Revenue comes in as long as they share it with the cities and towns, which that's always a question.
The ripple effect, I guess my point is the ripple effect of what anybody does is significant across the board. And that creates all kinds of different issues. What do? Instead of trying to figure out how to generate revenue, they cut revenues here, there, and everywhere, mm-hmm. and then that means they have to cut services, and that that puts a heavier burden on the city of Keene, in my mind.
And no, it does. And in this year and the year before and the year before, they said, "Oh, look, we have a $300 million surplus. We have a $400 million surplus." You don't have a surplus if you still haven't paid your bills. Like I said, I use the example, Chris, of you and I at the end of the month look at our checking account and say, oh, look at that, I have a $3,000 surplus. Haven't paid the mortgage or rent, haven't made the car payment, but boy, I've got a surplus. And that's what the state does. They say, we have a surplus. They haven't paid their bills, what they owe cities and towns.
Yeah.
They keep it, and they say, we have a surplus. Mm-hmm. No, you don't. But they keep it. I mean, much the same segue over into the schools where the judge said, hey, look, you are not funding an adequate education. So you don't have a surplus when you haven't adequately provided the monies you need to communities.
Yeah.
But, unless we change the makeup of the legislature and the governor, that's never going to change. It's just going to rinse and repeat.
It's not even changing it because we've had Democratic bodies that are in the Senate and the House and a Democratic governor. We've had Republicans. We have currently Republican. Does an elected official actually have the courage to look at a bigger vision and start going down a different path and a different road?
And I just don't see it.
I don't see it in this day and age.
Well, young people, they're going to have to because now, you're right. It's like, you know what? We're not going to do that. We're going to live off property taxes. We have now entered an era where young people getting out of college, well, even if they're a few years out of college, literally have no chance of buying a home. That we used to joke, Chris, years ago, back in the horse and buggy days when you and I were first on city council together, everything was estimated by the $100,000 home. Of course, now the $100,000 home went to a $200,000 home. That $200,000 home is now entering the $500,000 home category. The average price for a home in New Hampshire now is just averaging around $500,000. You see those new homes being built on down near the Swansea town line down near Market Basket. They're just the last housing development in Keene. When those were originally proposed years ago, they were $200,000 homes, $225,000. Yeah. Now they're going to be about $500,000.
Yeah.
A young person getting out of college, or like I said, even a few years into the into working, they're not affording a home, and that now you have your $500,000 house. Now it's the property taxes are based on a $500,000 house. If we don't change the tax structure in New Hampshire, young people will never get a home. It's just not going to happen. It's always just going to be apartments now, which, by the way, are exuberantly expensive, even just to get a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment. The tax structure has to change in New Hampshire because it is not sustainable. I mean, before it was uncomfortable, now it's not sustainable. And hopefully, like you said, hopefully we can get a legislature and a governor up there that can see beyond what's in front of them. They can see that this is not going to work. And unless we just want people coming up from Connecticut, New York, whatever, that fortunately for them, a bunch of money in the bank and just buying the home for cash, mortgages are almost a thing of the past now. Everybody that can afford a home is paying cash for it. Not to belabor this too long, it has to change. It's not sustainable the way it's going right now.
Yeah.
Property taxes aren't sustainable for people that already have homes.
Yeah.
We know that. But like I said, the state keeps saying they have a $400 million surplus. They don't send us the revenues they owe us. It's not a surplus.
Yeah. I think that we need to. I'll reach out next week to, or this week to Josh Greenwald too. I'll like to see if I could get him on and just talk about where the.
Josh is never shy in front of a microphone. I'm sure he'll show up.
Yeah,
kind of like us.
Right, and then and go from there, because I'd really like to know where the market is today. I know that I go on a weekly basis and look at the stock, and there's very little stock. But that's this time of year. I get it. But even when at the peak of the season, it was still many below. It's how people are making a living is because of what you just said: 500,000, 200. These $200,000 or 300,000 houses, $100,000 houses that used to be $120,000 houses.
Just a couple years ago.
So that's how people are surviving. Is they make the hit on that, and it's that much more revenue, I would guess. But I want Josh here to really. If
you're going to sell your house, which you'll make, most people, if you've had your house 10, 15, 20 years and you sell it, you're going to make one heck of a profit. You've just got to be able to figure out what you're doing. And what some people are doing is they just retire and move to a state with a different type of tax structure. And that's unfortunate. Then, as you just said, somebody comes in and just pays cash for it. And that young person just does not have a chance of getting a home. So, got to fix the system.
I don't pretend to understand the system whatsoever. So the other thing I wanted to bring up, and I wanted to just let me get here on my phone here for a second and go back to where I was.
That's where I write. Paper and pen, baby.
Well, you know what happened this morning.
I'll never find it.
So, businesses.
Yep.
And your opinion and what the city council is thinking about, and is there a concern? Do you guys even talk about this on some levels? Businesses that are closed or empty right now. So, Tim Pett.
Yeah, and you're going to see that, I'm sure, under Mayor Kahn.
Yeah.
We've had, just general conversation, nothing in depth. That is going to be discussed by council because, as you're aware, the whole downtown project is about to come back around again and be discussed in January. And one thing that wasn't discussed enough was the time frame and the impact on businesses. Most of the argument, as you know, was about what it's going to look like when we finish. But not enough discussion has happened with the local businesses about what happens during the construction time frame and what is the construction time frame. Yeah, there are a few holes downtown. Not as many as I thought there would be, because with the construction project looming a year or two away, I thought some might be nervous about, starting a venture right now, not knowing the exact time frame. So, but most of the holes downtown are getting filled. But yes, it isn't something that we've formally discussed, but it is something that we do talk about.
So going back to what I was about to say was Jim Eddy's, this is the old Tempestus, right? Mm-hmm. Which is
Lower Winchester.
Yeah, it's a great place. Tempestus, Jimmy does a great job. Raimundo's, which is about to reopen, but that's been going on. That
Grill, I think it's called.
Yeah, that's been going on for months and months and months.
I guess that was a pretty extensive project because they have the whole building, not just renovating a restaurant.
Oh, they bought the building itself?
I believe the whole building's involved with that. So there's been some extensive...
Oh, all right. I did not know that. And that's the only way I could see a restaurant in there being successful is if they owned the whole building, because then they'd get the revenue from rental apartments.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just don't see how it survives.
Yeah, it's I'll tell you, and having owned a place, back before all these, it's much more expensive now to own and operate a restaurant.
Oh, I bet.
I mean, it's just, and I know
what's the delta? What is that between expenses and revenue?
Well, the margins, that you hope to make overall, at least back when I owned a place, you want to make 15 to 20%, beyond all your expenses and everything. But a lot of that, you can say 15 to 20%. Of course, that means you're paying after that you're paying yourself. now, God, if the margins are 10%, I think a lot of them are lucky. The costs of operating are so expensive, and that's if everything goes perfect, like food cost and waste. You want to try to keep that under 1%. That's why in a restaurant, it's so in the kitchen, you've got to be so accurate about what you serve. Your portion sizes have to be exact. You can't just wing it. So it's tough. Obviously, a place that sells alcohol has a chance of making a better profit, because unless you have somebody that's not being honest and you pour exactly the way you're supposed to, those profits are pretty much indicated. There's not a lot of waste there, or there shouldn't be. Food is another story. That's a tough one. You can't go losing any product. For an example, Chris, if you look at somebody orders a drink in a bar, and they're expensive now. Thank God, those days are way behind me. Somebody orders a $12, martini or whatever. Bartender whips it up. There you go. You pay for it. Mm-hmm. If somebody orders a $12, maybe a small meal or whatever, you think about what goes into that. The food prep, the food cost, the cost to pay a cook to make it, to serve it, and to wash the dish. The margins on that are extremely small. So your margins in restaurants are very small. Then, of course, you have your higher rents, you have your higher food costs, you have your higher wages. Mm-hmm. It's tough. So when people go out and you see the cost of everything up, it's not because the business owners are making a lot more profit. They're just trying to stay in business. But segueing back to what you said, I'm aware there's a couple of restaurants downtown that are thinking putting them up for sale. Of course, I've always said, even when I owned a place, everything's for sale for the right price.
Right.
But there's a lot of competition in Keene now. Just say, Chris, for the that martini, somebody wants to go out and get a martini. Okay. There's a lot of places just within downtown Keene where you can do that.
Right.
So it's a tough competitive market downtown right now. But segueing back in, downtown Keene right now, in downtowns such as Keene communities, are social downtowns now with your specialty shops. The old days of your Sears, Woolworths, Goodnose, those are behind us. So, shops like Ted's Shoe and Sport, they're a rarity.
No, I agree with that too, but I also believe that Ted has worked extremely hard.
He works extremely
hard to market what he's trying to do, and he's been doing it for over 20 years now.
And he's social too. He does social events.
That's what I'm saying. Is that he gives of himself to the community.
Yep.
And we're fortunate for that. And so,
if you're going to just sell a widget, you've got to do more than sell the widgets.
Right.
You got to have widget ceremonies.
Right. But I mean, you got Timoleons.
Yeah, that is unique in itself. That whole building is up for sale.
Again?
Well, it has been. One of the reasons.
Well, somebody bought it.
Yeah, I guess the renovation on it is extensive.
Yeah. And
I think that's the holdback right there. I've heard the building's on the market for a reasonable price. It's just that the amount of getting it up to code, electrical, plumbing, it's been a while. I heard there's old fuse boxes up there.
Really?
That doesn't quite cut it anymore.
Well, how does that happen? And how does that happen in the city? That you can have? Doesn't somebody have to? If they're already in business, do they not have to keep up with codes?
Yes.
Yes, they do, or yes, they don't.
Yes, they're supposed to. Now, that particular building, don't know the whole history of it, but yes, and and you're aware, Chris, because after the cobblestone fire, after that happened, there was a much more extensive look into inspections and codes, and I think it was probably one of those issues that the city found they were behind on, or maybe not being as aggressive as they should be.
Yeah,
and so I think a lot of that's I know that's being brought up to date. That maybe, don't know. I don't think there was intentional of this, but I think it probably wasn't as aggressive as it should have been.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it took a fire like that to get things going. Fortunately, nobody was seriously hurt with that. But so yeah, I mean, codes are being brought up, and that particular building, that's a tough one. Somebody's gonna have to come in with a couple more bucks than you and I have, and I think if somebody has the money, an outside entity or somebody local that has a couple of bucks, that building could really be turned into a heck of a profit if you've got the money to invest. Because we just talk about housing, you could put a lot of apartments in that downtown building if you could afford to bring it up to code.
What I would like to see too is with this renovation of the downtown, that alleyway should be redone too. And in the scheme of things, if you go down there now, it's a little bit of there's they put some paving stone.
The old paving bricks. Yeah, that was a bad idea.
Do something different with it. Make it a little bit nicer because it's a nice little area. You could do something with that if you spend a few pennies with that. The city has spent money. We own a lot down there too, and we've done it with older lighting.
Meaning the county?
Yeah, and so I think if that building does get bought, if the city could put some money down that little street right there, what's that called?
Lamson Street.
Lamson Street.
I'm sure that'd be done. I mean, there's no sense doing anything now because if somebody goes in,
it should be done when you do the renovation.
Right, because that road is going to be torn up for water, sewer, electrical.
Yeah.
Kind of like when the rest of downtown gets torn up for water, sewer, and electrical. But
all right, I'm going to keep on going. So Timoleon's, I said.
Yep, you did.
Kodo, which is a hard building. That was, what was that? The seafood place that was there before it?
It was a Red Lobster.
Red Lobster.
Point.
It was a 99 before that.
At one point.
Or at some point, yeah.
There was a few restaurants in that particular building.
That just seems to be a place that's just enough off the beaten path that it initially gets a bite and then it doesn't. Or something. I don't know. I don't pretend to understand what it is because New Jersey, Jersey Mike seems to do quite well for itself.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's right on the corner where people can just pull.
Well, it's funny if you look across the street. The Applebee's is one of the busiest Applebee's in the country. We drove by there. Holly and I were riding around, just doing one of those tours around Keene. Was it New Year's Eve or New Year's Eve afternoon? Yeah, it was. It was packed. Yeah. I mean, that parking lot was jammed.
Yeah.
And then you go across the street to the old
and you also have
Kodo.
the burger place across the way, too. And then you have Rick's Ice Cream, which is my favorite.
So it shows the market's there. It's just maybe just got to come up with the right niche.
Yeah. And just a note, we got a bakery going into the apothecary, which is really exciting.
Yep.
But that leaves a spot out in West Keene.
Right.
So
it's kind of musical chairs, but it's nice to see that. It's nice to see that people do want to move downtown.
Yeah,
right under the Colonial Theater.
I'll tell you.
Oh yeah, near the bakery, don't you, Chris? Yeah. Under the Colonial Theater, Amber Moon is coming back in again. They were there 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. Kind of just a unique little shop with some trinkets and oils and incense.
Well, on one side is a woman that reads
your future
cards and all that stuff, and
I
try to stay away from that. That stuff scares me.
Yeah, I walked by the other day and she just looked at me and she goes, "No, just keep walking." I'm like, "Okay, I don't want to know."
No, she closes up. No, she doesn't. She doesn't go like this. She closes up and goes inside when she sees
like
you
walking. You don't want to know your future.
The Laughing Gull, which is
bad location.
It's no parking.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Bad location.
It's no parking. I mean, at least it didn't
seem
like
right,
it.
For those that don't know, that was a restaurant right across from the pub.
Because they had and the owners were just beautiful people, and they had some really good meals out there. I mean, it was. I mean, I liked some of the stuff they were serving up, and it's just too bad.
No, yeah.
But doesn't that go to show the whole? Because before that, they had a food truck, and the food truck was highly successful, so they took the next step. But doesn't it show you how close that whole revenue to expenses is, and how success can be a fleeting moment in time?
It's funny because even at where I am right now, I've had offers to go in and be a general manager and manage a restaurant, and it's like, I don't want to work that many hours a week anymore. Yeah. But it's such a tough business right now, especially if you really care, which I would. Yeah. And I'd be like, no, I'll burn myself out doing that because, I mean, you're living it. There is no margin for error. Yeah. Now, it's funny you just mentioned that. You just mentioned the Kodo. We just mentioned the one that had no parking and one that has a ton of parking.
Yeah.
And they both...
But is it location?
They both?
Do you think?
Yeah, I think it's...
Is Kodo one of those situations where it's more of a celebration than it is anything else?
I think it was a niche that just didn't quite catch on to this area.
Yeah. Did they think that maybe because of the college crowd, it would be something that would be utilized more, and it just wasn't?
Yeah.
Because there's a place going in now out by Hannaford's that's going to have a similar type of effect, plus sushi too, which I'm really excited about. So.
Well, I'm surprised when the Mexican restaurant went in next to Hannaford's.
Mm-hmm.
When I looked at that, I was wondering. I said, I'm not sure how well this is going to do. It wasn't being judgmental. I was just like, I wonder how they took off great.
Yeah.
They've done a great job. So I'm sure they probably looked at it and, when they do their market studies and said, you know what, we can do this. And I hope they do. I wish everybody success. For a city Keene size, the amount of eateries that we have is amazing in that they're all, we just talked about that downtown, how many places you can get a martini. It's a tough competition. Those margins, I'm sure, are tight.
Yeah.
But, I wish, like I said, another bakery coming downtown. Obviously,
a great bakery.
We must love
really
our
excited.
sweets because that'll be like the third bakery downtown within a couple hundred yards of each other.
And B's Bakery is doing a phenomenal job. I mean, I go there once a week.
That's the one right up, just up on Washington
where Christian's
Street.
Bakery used to be.
Right.
And they're doing a great job, and I really enjoy their sandwiches. I enjoy the pastries.
You remember what was there before in that
desserts.
location back in the day? Remember the restaurant?
Brando's
Pizza.
Brando's in Delhi.
So
The best grinders that to this day, they were the best grinders I've ever eaten. Aside from when my mom would make grinders and she'd pour some Catalina sauce on the something she did. It was just the best. But she would bring me. I'd go out Troop 302. We would have a camp over out at the Farrer's Farm, and we would go out, and my mom would pack in a Brando. That was like the biggest treat.
the Brando's.
So
Now
good,
we're talking about grinders going down that
I'm
way.
not hungry. I haven't eaten in 3 days. I've been sick.
North Street Market, not far from where we were.
North Street Market was a big grinder too.
And of course now it's what CC and
Yeah, or Pears Market in the day too. I had some good stuff too.
Not to say we never.
But Brando's was for me was like the
Yep.
home run. It was across from the middle school.
And it's nice to see that eateries
Yeah.
have stayed in there. But yeah, another bakery coming downtown shortly.
Yeah.
So that'll be good, and I'm sure they'll invite Chris.
I'll tell you too, though, if you're out in Westmoreland and you haven't experienced this yet, do it. Go downtown Brattleboro, downtown Westmoreland, and go to the Barn and Thistle.
Downtown, that's
Cafe.
Downtown, no,
But
a store here, a store there.
It has transformed that area into
Right. It's a destination.
It really is. But they, the squares come alive with some of the stuff they've done in there, and it's nice to see because prior to that you had the town hall. Mm-hmm. That was it, and now you have and I'm not to say that you didn't have the general store before. You did. But now you've got this place that people are going all over the place too, with the Barn and Thistle.
Yeah.
So
now you mentioned I'm making little notes, the things that remind. That's a good point because technically, as far as Keene resident would go, it's in the middle of nowhere. It kind of is.
Yeah.
Sullivan General Store just opened with a couple of local residents. That they are marketing. When I pop on Facebook, whatever in the morning, there they are. I mean, they are blasting social media. And
do they have pizza yet? I got to go up there. They owe me a pizza.
They do.
They owe me a pizza.
Yeah, I saw that. And, kudos to them. Getting out there, middle of, once again, Sullivan, getting people from Keene to go up there. And I just saw, moving out a little bit over in Peterborough, they have, what's it called? Monadnock Oil and Vinegar, I think it was called. Started to advertise all the time.
Oh, you mean at the maple syrup place that used to be?
Well, that's what it's going to be now. That's what I was going to say. They're moving there now.
Yeah.
Right in Dublin.
Yeah.
And they're going to be doing outdoor venues, and they're getting a full kitchen license. I was talking to the owners, and so that's going to be another one of those little destination things. So, kudos to everybody that invests money in something like that, because I can tell you firsthand, it ain't cheap. No. When you're sitting on your corporate headquarters, it's a tough market. And banks, they're tough as far as lending for restaurants and bars because the failure rate's like 90% in the first 2 years.
Yeah.
So, kudos to all you out there, doing a bar and a restaurant, because I know how tough it is to make a profit. So what else do you got over there, Chris, on your list?
I was looking at. So one Central Square where rock, paper, scissors used to be. That's not full. Miller Brothers, of course, is wide open. and that's a pretty big
Yeah,
space.
the Miller Brothers, the Richlands own that, and that's the advantage about having a local owner. You know, they owned it.
They own the building.
They own the building. They sold it. They have a lot of, most people knew it for Miller Brothers, but there's a lot of apartments upstairs. That building houses a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they had very reasonable rents. A lot of them were studio apartments, not that big, but downtown housing. And a firm, I believe they're from Massachusetts, bought it and basically raised the rents enormously.
Right.
I guess based on market value, but that's the difference of having a local owner that's kept it down, and somebody else from Mass comes in, and I guess
it's
you
also,
talk about
but it's also when the building's been in the family forever, they probably own the building. You know what I'm saying? No mortgage.
Right. Well,
so the rent is reflective, can be reflective of what that those costs don't have to be incurred. Now there's continued costs, there's building maintenance costs, but there's not mortgage costs per se.
Right. Now somebody comes in, they're going to be, obviously the new owners are going to pay the mortgage, but they're in business to make a profit. And unfortunately, when it comes down to housing, the people that suffered on that were the ones that were really on marginal incomes that could afford the rents they were charging for a studio apartment. They come in, they bring it up to market value, which I believe a 2-bedroom right now is about $1,600 a month in Keene, and they couldn't afford it. So when we talk about the whole segue of homelessness, which we've talked about, now you potentially have a whole new segment of people potentially homeless that are working 40 hours a week, but now cannot afford the apartment.
It's called the working poor.
And so when they talk about the homelessness, there's all different segments of homelessness, which that's another show for a whole way more than just an hour.
Yeah.
So.
But is there any? Have you heard anything about anything going in there at all?
No. Not yet.
Because that's been going on a year and a half at least, right?
Right. Now the other place that's been empty, a retail store on Main Street, is right next to the.
Where Fat Stuff used to be.
Next to the burger.
Where the bridal place
was.
Where
the bridal shop was.
And they did so much work in there.
I know.
And
I felt bad. They were gone in the middle of the night. It was just.
Well, no, it's one of those things where I think the pandemic really did affect them on certain levels too. Not more around not being able to get the product, and so they can't get the if you can't get the product and you can't get the dresses out, kind of but maybe I don't know that.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure either. I just think maybe the market in Keene is just a little too small.
Yeah, I don't know.
But that building, once again, is owned by the Sanborns, who are the ones that.
Under investigation.
That under investigation by the Justice Department for their illegal activities and money scheme at their casino up in Concord.
Yeah.
So they own that building in Keene. So, I can't 100% say this for a fact, but I know some people have gone in to look and they find out who owns the building and they don't want to have anything to do with it. So
yeah. No, I've heard certain people wanted to leave because of that. So. Panera's first location.
Yep, that's still empty.
Yeah.
And I know Panera, people said why they moved because corporate wanted a drive-through.
Yeah.
That's just
which
one
makes
of the
no sense to me, but
I didn't think so either.
I actually think they have less traffic out there than they had before, but that's just me.
I think so too, but
because I go there, to get something. I've told you this before. I want to be a taste tester for Panera's because I never have had anything there that I haven't liked. But
part-time taste tester for there, and then part-time mattress tester to make sure they're comfortable somewhere else.
Well, and Old Mattress Store is the next one. There
you go.
Yeah. So Joanne Fabrics had to go out because of Hobby Lobby, right?
That was another story.
That's what I was told. So
basically, yes. I mean,
it's in the contract that they had to. They couldn't have
competition.
No competition.
And their lease was about to come to an end, and Hobby Lobby came in and said, "We don't want them there," and that was it. I mean, we've had discussions about Hobby Lobby before. I mean, it is what it is. It's just not my type of place based on the monies that they donate to the charities that they do are well known to be hate groups.
Yeah.
And I will not shop at a business that donates their monies and funds to hate groups, anti-LGBTQ. They refuse to sell anything to do with Hanukkah.
Really?
They eliminated anything to do with Hanukkah. Hey, it's their niche. They can do what they want.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It just isn't something that that I want to be affiliated with as far as being a customer goes.
Yeah, and then there's the old mattress, Joanne Fabrics. There's 2 to 3 spots at Kohl's Plaza.
Yeah.
Which seems rotational there.
The big party store got filled by a unique place, and it has to do with cancer. With liver treatments and
dialysis.
Dialysis,
okay.
And it's a unique. I saw that going in. I said, well, that's unique.
Yeah.
But it worked.
Yeah.
It worked. It filled a business and filled a vacancy, and obviously there's a need.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully none of us have to use it. But it's there. So that filled. But brick and mortars, they're actually coming back a little faster than I thought they would, Chris. Because the Amazons of the world we know have really pounded some of the retailers out, and some of it in the case of what would you have? You had home. Was it not Home Goods? God, I'm in brain cramping today here. Out next to
Walmart.
Old Navy.
Old Navy. Yeah. Okay.
Of course, Old Navy came in.
But Old Navy's bucking the trend. Gap has bucked a trend in the years past too, where certain communities they'll go in and they'll go on Main Street. Certain communities,
right?
Hanover being one of them, New Hampshire. But Old Navy's been bucking it, saying let's go back into the storefronts and getting out of the malls.
Right. No, there's been an adjustment, and I was reading about the other day because they're talking about millennials and the generations that are much younger than me. They thought the way they were looking at it, as you mentioned, some of the business models are like, you know what? Most of this is going to be online now, and we're going to get out of the brick and mortar. But what they found was, especially towards the end of the major part of the pandemic, the young people of those generations wanted to get out again. They wanted to do what you and I used to do, go into brick and mortars, actually go into businesses. So while they're still ordering things online, they're actually going out. So a lot of the businesses that thought their model was going to change and they were just going to go shrink down and maybe go online, bookstores for being an example, they thought they were going to go down to zero because everybody was just going to buy their books online and put them on their Kindles. Book sales have taken off again. Mm-hmm. So bookstores are opening back up again. Of course, in Keene, we have our own Toadstool bookstore, a privately owned one, which is nice. But the chains are actually opening back up again. So you never know. The markets have ebb and flows.
I think if it ever opens up again to the point where it opens up to Nobles or Barnes and Noble,
right?
That they'll be very careful to make it a quarter of the size of what they were.
Right.
They had so much overhead. That's what brought them down. It was the overhead of the cost and the product not meeting those costs.
Yep.
I mean, if you've ever gone into a nice one, it's just like it was massive.
Yeah, it was. Now, talking about stores downtown, I got to get a shout out to Brandy Wells, who will combine her 2 stores and put them into where Winchendon Furniture was.
Which is a huge
Winchendon Furniture. They closed down completely and shut down their business.
Yeah.
That was a big store, and when I saw that emptying, I'm like, this is going to hurt because that's a big hole to fill. Mm-hmm. And kudos to Brandy. She jumped right on that, put her 2 businesses together, combined them. And she also is now one of her old locations. She's actually leasing again, and she's actually subleasing to anybody that wants to go in and have a 1 or 2 day or 3 hour event. Mm-hmm. And then the other spot is going to be a bakery.
Right.
So all those spots filled pretty quickly, but kudos to her. Because she took a chance.
Is that because she's writing out her contract?
No. I think she just, from what I heard, and she just decided, you know what, I can make some money doing this.
Oh, okay.
And
good for her.
Took a chance. And let's face it, the square footage she opened up. That's what this store used to be back when we were kids, Chris. It's been a bunch of things. Was that Jupiter, 5 and Dime, that location?
Yeah. Yeah, it was
because I know Deanie went in there for a while and opened up had his kitchen store in there.
It was Jupiter.
But before that was a Jupiter 5 and Dime.
Fireworks is Goodnouse, and Hannah Grimes is Woolworths, and
look at that functioning brain cells.
And Creative Encounters was Endicott Johnson,
the shoe store.
Yeah.
I was looking at some of the stores downtown.
I know Creative Encounters isn't there anymore, but that's how I remember it. It's or maybe it's the coffee shop, Prime Roast. I can't remember.
And for those that don't know, Sears used to be where the poorhouse is now. That whole block basically was Sears with Howard's Jewelers.
Yep. To the right.
There was actually a fur store there for a while that sold minks and things for a while.
Well, that's just like the
back in the day,
like Bergeron's,
right
down at where the jeweler store is, Amani or whatever that is.
You know what? You don't have to go back too far.
It's sad that I know the old names more than I know the new names.
They say that as you get older, you remember
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, like I remember the day, Chris, when Railroad Square actually had trains on Railroad Square.
But before we get too
old here,
all right,
and
so
bore
let's
people.
keep going. So there's 23 West Street, which is the old Amethyst storefront. There's the old Sports Source, the old cigar bar. The old one, the Diplomat continues to do. That's a little hidden thing too, where Anderson's, the florist used to be, is now a nice little cigar bar. If people want to go in there and have a nice drink and a cigar,
it's a niche that has a following.
Yeah, it does. It does. And when the other cigar bar closed, I think that before the Diplomat opened up, it was a group of people that really want that little thing, and it's right in the midst of the college crowd too. And I think sometimes the college kids like that kind of thing too.
That's a great location, right off the beaten path, but close enough.
Yeah.
And whenever I drive by there, they seem to have a good niche going.
And then there's the old Olympia stores. You remember that
down at the Walmart Plaza?
Yeah. And then there's the bridal store we already mentioned. MFS is what's happening with MFS, and they're going to go out there, and is somebody going to come in and buy that? And
that's a good location.
Both those locations. Think about that. It's 93rd and on Main Street.
Now, going back to when you talk about all this, that's why as Mayor Kahn comes in, this is going to be something that we're going to really talk about in detail. This isn't just going to happen roughshod.
Yeah.
When we do this downtown project, you can be sure that the mayor and council and the downtown businesses are going to be in this deep. This just isn't something that's just going to be pushed through.
But here's the problem with all that. I mean, I remember when I was chair of the school board, and
we have 3 minutes left, by the way.
Oh, we do? Okay, I better hurry up then. Really, 3 minutes already?
3 minutes, Chris. If two people can babble for an hour and talk about nothing, it's you and I.
Yeah, but real quickly. When I was chair of the school board, we sold the middle school.
Right.
And everybody kept saying, you can't sell it to this person, you can't sell it, you got it. And it's like, no, wait. Ours isn't to say what it's going to be. Ours is to sell it and get the profit and move on.
Yeah.
And it's the same for you guys. You can have some input, but how far can the council go?
As far as
bringing in, I mean, you can market. I mean, I think.
Oh yeah.
I think the partnership, the bigger partnership, is with the chamber and what Luca's doing to try to promote, and Jamie Trowbridge and promoting the region. I think that is where the partnerships need to be.
You're absolutely right. It's an all hands on deck, and every mayor comes in and brings their strengths and weaknesses, and I think Jay coming in, especially having been vice president of the college, where he's had to work with the college and the city.
Yeah.
I think his experience, and especially after being a state senator, his experience will be bringing everybody together. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that. You and I are very aware there's been some friction between some members of the city and some members of the county. And I think a lot of that was more hype than anything else. But I think this mayor coming in is going to bring it all back together. Enough of any bickering, because the bottom line is, everybody's in this together.
How much time we got?
We have 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Okay, a few crunching numbers that I like to push off here. $1.4 billion the skiers and snowmobilers are spending. Visitor spending in New Hampshire last winter exceeded pre-pandemic levels of $1 billion in 2018-2019, and built on 2021-2022 winter spending of $1.2 billion.
And that's why we need snow.
That's right. Sources.
We need snow, otherwise we lose that revenue.
New Hampshire Division of Travel and Tourism, New Hampshire Travel Impact online tool. So that's one, and then seven. The number is 7. Manchester has gone to the dogs. Manchester ranks among the top 10 best cities for dog owners nationally, with 7 dog parks, 31 dog-friendly restaurants, and 178 dog trails and 60 dog walkers. Source is Plouts and Mouts. analyzing mine data points.
Okay, that one was boring. Next.
All right, New Hampshire's ranked among the top 10 states for tech startups across 6 metrics. We received high marks for public funding, patent innovation, and concentration in tech firms and tech workers, but ranked lower in venture capital growth.
Well, in the last 15 seconds, then leading on to that, the Keene, the old Keene Drive-In property. Hopefully, we can set up in years to come. It's going to be a high-tech business area if we can get enough people in here to work there.
We started it.
We're working on it.
Continue to build on it.
That's
all
it.
right.
That's all she writes. See you
Have a
next
great
week. Thank you.